Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's just gone 4 o'clock now, so we'll look to start the virtual meeting for this evening. Firstly, we'd like to thank you all for taking your time out your afternoon to join us. Ideally, over the last number of maybe 3 to 5 years, this Year 10 parent information meeting has happened on site, but due to the kind of current risk assessments and things are in place, it is far safer and far more efficient to run this meeting virtually via a Zoom platform. Just for you to be aware, the meeting this evening is being recorded. So if you prefer for your cameras and microphones to be off, that's fine. We will then download the footage from this evening, transfer it to our YouTube channel, and then email the recording out to parents that unfortunately couldn't join us live this evening, so they've got the opportunity to get the key information and updates as well. So as I said, thank you for joining us. This meeting is being recorded, so if you prefer for your cameras to be off, that's okay, and prefer for your microphones to be off. There is a chat function available. So if there are any questions throughout the session, please use the chat function. We have a host of our senior staff, but also some of the English team monitoring the chat, and they will do their best to respond, or if there's something we need to answer collectively, we'll do that as well. So as I said, thank you for joining us. My name is Mr. Johnston. I'm the Deputy Head at Healthy, and I'm sure over the years know many of you parents and guardians that are joining us this evening. I'm going to give a kind of overview of Year 10 and share some information around Year 11 as well. But the main kind of purpose of this evening is to give you an update around the English module exam that is happening in January. And Mrs. Jones, our second in English department, will give you those updates. But firstly, there's some of the key kind of ideas that I want to cover. And the first point is around parental support with home learning and regular revision and completion of homework. We understand over the last 18 months that many of our pupils have had significant amount of time off school due to school closure. And for us, it's really important those routines and expectations are kind of embedded now prior to lots of examinations take place, and pupils completing revision at home regularly, doing homework regularly. So when it comes to bottlenecks in the examination kind of timetable over the next 18 months, that they get familiar with how to work at home and also kind of a quiet place to work and so on. So we would, really appreciate your support as parents in getting those routines embedded with pupils, regularly conducting homework, regularly revising at home, attending some of the homework clubs in school or some of the additional revision sessions that Mrs. Jones will share in a moment. Okay, so the first point is around that, getting the pupils into routines and the importance of home learning as well as what's happening in school. The second point, the main focus of the meeting this evening is around the English literature early entry examination that will take place in January 22. And as I said, Mrs. Jones will cover that in a little bit more detail. But also many of the pupils now across their whole curriculum are working on controlled assessment. Controlled assessment is the new word for coursework. So every single lesson and every single subject is really important at the moment. So they're attending regularly, they're preparing for lessons, they're doing all of the work in their lessons to their highest standard. So in geography, in catering, in Welsh Baccalaureate, all of these subjects, in science, there are practical examinations as well. So even though there may not be formal exams happening in every subject currently, the coursework is significant marks as part of their ongoing work, as well as in technology and IT, BTEC sport, for example. 60% of those courses are controlled assessments. So it's really, really important for us, the pupils, are engaging effectively in their learning, trying their best in every single lesson, having positive attitudes to learning to ensure that they get the best marks in preparation for examinations. As I said a moment or two ago, Welsh Baccalaureate is a qualification that is studied across the 2-year period in Year 10 and 11, and there are modular entries or deadlines for the coursework that needs to be completed in Welsh Baccalaureate. So again, it's important that pupils are attending those lessons regularly, meeting the deadlines, corresponding with their teachers via their virtual classrooms and doing all of the work that they should. And as I touched upon, some of the pupils' GCSE options, so from design to art, to IT, to geography, to BTEC sport, for example, performing arts and drama, many of these subjects have significant proportion of the courses that are based around ongoing assessment. So even though there are lots of exams at the end of Year 11, pupils can gain lots of their marks and really kind of foundation or build a foundation of good GCSE results by doing that work regularly throughout the 2 academic years. On my next slide, I'm going to share that there are regular homework support groups after school, which is general homework clubs. So if they need printing, if they need to use the resources in school, but also Mrs. Jones in a moment will cover some specialist homework revision sessions that are focused around this English literature paper that will take place of an evening. And if there are any children that require transport, so normally they catch the bus to school, for example, we are also going to provide additional transport facilities if they need to stay on after the school day, to make sure that they're not kind of disadvantaged because they can't get home from school. So, but we would need communication in advance if they need access to that transport provision. And coming on towards the end, attendance is so important. Every single day in school is really important at the moment. We understand some of the COVID restrictions in terms of pupils isolating, or if they're symptomatic, awaiting kind of PCR results. We totally understand that they can't attend school in those circumstances. But for everything else, we need to have the pupils in front of us every single day. Every single lesson counts. When there are formal examinations that take place this summer, this autumn, and next year, the grade boundaries are not based just on HLD, is a national picture. So our pupils will be competing with pupils across Wales. So it's important that attendance is strong. You know, their attitudes to learning and progress in lessons every single day is important. So we kind of plead with you to get the pupils in. Our attendance has been improving over the last few weeks, but as you can imagine, looking at the data over the last 18 months where there was national school closures and so on, we need pupils in every single lesson, every single day, to get those kind of expert instruction and modelling from our specialist teaching staff in front of the pupils. And finally, before I hand over to Mrs. Jones, around communication with school. We did an audit recently. Our main vehicle for communication with parents is now via our InTouch system, which is an email platform. So if a pupil's absent, if we send in home data drops regarding ongoing performance, information, reporting. So there is an InTouch email system that is our main line of communication. But also as parents, there is the Class Charts app, which you can download, that gives you regular monitoring of behaviour points, positive and or negative. You can see if homeworks are being submitted on time, for example. But of course, there is still some of the traditional routes of communication, which there's a slide at the end of this presentation in which you can phone the school, and you can be directed to the specific head of department or head of year, or the class teacher if needed. But also we post regular updates via our social media pages such as Twitter and Facebook. So please, communicate with us. If there are any concerns, any problems on an individual case-by-case basis, we've got a specialist staff from our ALM team to our heads of subject, our pastoral leaders, to put support plans in place. We do understand the last 12, 18, 24 months has been a difficult time in the community and nationally. So if there are any concerns or anything, kind of bespoke provisions or offers we can make, we'll always try our best, but please, keep us up to date with any support or updates that are required. And final slide from me before I hand over to Mrs. Jones. This is our kind of overview of extracurricular activities. There's some of this that is sporting, some of this is for year 11 only, but some of this is for year 10 as well. So there are some generic homework clubs that are being offered, but from kind of mid to late November, Mrs. Jones will cover that in a moment, there will be a bespoke year 11 literature kind of class that will run up until the examination, which is planned around the delivery of that literature paper. So as I said, before I hand over to Mrs. Jones, there is a chat function. So if myself or Mrs. Jones doesn't cover anything specifically, please add it to the chat, or alternatively, you can email us or phone us in school via the main reception after this evening's presentation. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you for taking the time out, and I'll now hand over to Mrs. Jones. Thank you.
First of all, I just want to reiterate what Mr. Johnson has said already, and we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy days to come and listen to what we're doing in school to support your child as best as we can. First of all, I think we need to go through a few introductions. So in terms of the English team, we're a very proactive and experienced team, hopefully doing the Key Stage 3 years, so 7 to 9, you've had an opportunity to meet us maybe at parents' evenings, or spoken to us on the phone, or maybe even emailed us. We're led by the department by Mrs. Wilkinson, and then you've got myself as your second in English. We've also got Miss Crandon, who's a teacher of English and head of Year 11, as well as Miss Price and Miss Pereira, who are both teachers of English. We're also exceptionally lucky as well that we've got the additional support from Mr. Stone, who is one of our assistant heads. He's dropping into lessons at the moment and giving additional support where he can, and also he'll be taking part in some of the mock-up sessions. So when it comes to the English Literature GCSE, how exactly will your child be assessed? Well, there's always 3 components to the English Literature GCSE. Firstly, there's a centre-based assessment. As Mr. Johnson has said already, this is the new buzzword for the coursework. And in that, they will need to complete the poetry and the Macbeth elements. At this moment in time, they have both been completed. We're currently running mock-up sessions for the poetry assessment, which hasn't been completed by very few pupils at this moment in time, is less than 10%. We will be running opportunities in school hours for them to catch up with that. And the majority of those cases have been because they've been unwell or they've been isolated when they were sitting those centre-based assessments in class. What that required your child to do was to compare 2 poems. They had a few lessons preparation, and then they had a 2-hour window where they were expected to write this up individually. As I've said already, the majority of them have completed that already. They're very keen to get their marks, but as I'm sure you'll appreciate, at this moment in time, we're unable to share with them until they've been moderated and verified by the WJEC. So moving on then, usually there would be a Unit 1 examination as well as a Unit 2 examination. However, due to COVID, the WJEC have made some changes to the stipulations, and instead your child will only be sitting 1 examination this year instead of the 2. We've made a choice at Healthy, and we'll be putting them in for the early entry examination, which is Unit 1, as you can see on the screen there, which means that the paper that they will be sitting will be focusing on Of Mice and Men, as well as the unseen poetry. As a result of the second paper being cancelled, it means that this has now been doubled. So this 1 examination will be worth 75%, which is why we are so keen to get your support, as well as make it, positively clear to your child just how important this will be overall to them. So they've got the 25% for the centre-based assessment, and then 75% for the Unit 1 examination. So in terms of the updates, the exam will now take place on January the 11th, 2022. Unfortunately, this is going to be off the back of the 2-week Christmas holiday, which is why it's really, really important that we get your child's support so that they can be completing revision over the Christmas period, because we will have very little time to do with this with them when they return. As a result of it being doubled, is obviously replaced the second examination, which has already been cancelled. And as I've said already, we've run quite a few mock-up sessions already where pupils have been able to complete an analysis of their first and second, as well as the comparison of the poetry for the 25% of the overall grade. So you're probably wondering, what are we doing in school now to support your child to make sure that they're able to obtain this qualification? We're doing a number of things, as you can probably imagine. You're probably aware that we're a very experienced, very proactive department. So aside from running these mock-up sessions outside of the lessons that we are already teaching them, we see them quite heavily. We see them 8 hours a fortnight, so we know them particularly well. We will continue to do this until we mop up every single pupil, just to make sure that that coursework is complete, to give them the best possible footing for the examination taking place in January. We're currently reading the novella Of Mice and Men in class together, and this gives us an opportunity to talk about the themes, talk about the characters, talk about the language choices, just so that they're well equipped to start thinking about what they could put in their answers and their responses when it comes to the exam. When I said that we were an experienced department, not only are we able to share some of the examiner feedback that we've had from past papers, as some of the team have marked English literature papers previously, but we also know the past papers very, very well. At some points, it's actually quite sad that we know which characters come up on which years, but that just goes to show just how familiar we are with them. We'll also be leading revision sessions, as Mr. Johnson said earlier on, and they will be starting from Tuesday the 23rd of November. We will be reminding pupils about this, and we will make sure that an announcement has been posted on class charts as well as the Google Classrooms, just to remind pupils that those revision sessions will be running. Pupils will be split into higher and foundation tiers to sit this paper, and they would have been made aware of that in class already, which means that we will have 2 separate revision sessions running, those who are sitting the higher paper and those who are sitting foundation. We'll also be updating the Google Classrooms with revision links and past paper questions. And of course, we'll be giving active feedback within lessons as much as we can. We try to make sure that we're going around doing live marking and making sure that we can say to them at the point of writing, this is what we need to improve on, this is what we need to include, just to make sure that when they are completing their responses that they're familiar with what the expectations are. So that is everything that we're doing, but what is it that you can do to support your child with this qualification? And there's a common misconception that you can't revise for English, which is completely untrue. But firstly, tying into what Mr. Johnson has said, attendance is key. As I've stated already, we're currently reading the novella in class, so we'll be picking up key ideas, key themes, looking at the characters in a lot of detail. And if your child is missing from the lesson, they are going to miss the specialist feedback and knowledge input at the point that they need it. So even though we appreciate that at this moment in time people are unwell and they may be isolating, I would encourage you and your child that if you miss any time off, that you make sure that they are catching up, because we are moving through at such a pace at this moment in time to make sure that we finish the novella, that we mop up the coursework, and that they're properly equipped for the exam. We really do need to make sure that we're moving through at quite a pace. So catching up should be the responsibility of the pupil and not of the class teacher. Obviously, we want to make sure that exam prep questions are completed to the best of their ability. So, for example, the extra questions are worth 10 marks. Feel free to sit down and maybe look through your responses with your child. If they've only made 5 points, they're obviously only going to get 5 marks. And why not then give them an opportunity to sit down in a quiet space within your household and make sure that these 10 points can be awarded, and then we're happy to mark them when they return back to class the following day. As I've said already, you can make sure that your child is attending revision sessions. Mr. Johnson's made it clear that, if there are issues with transport, you only have to let us know and we can sort this for you. I'd encourage you to check Google Classrooms and class charts regularly. We will be posting things on there from positive praise to negative praise, also if people are falling behind, as well as some of the things that we might think that they need to catch up on or maybe revisit, especially when we come to the revision sections or the revision sessions that we've been running in school. I would actively encourage you to read and reread the novel and your notes. Feel free to sit down with them. You can get the audio version of Mice and Men as well if you wanted to sit and listen to it being read to them, or even sit down and read alongside them. Even test them and ask them questions. What do they know about this character already? What do they know about this particular theme? What does the setting reveal about the type of things that the characters are going through at this moment in time? Will all be really, really helpful, and it'd be taking a proactive response in what your child could do with in terms of support. Creating character and quotation maps is something that we will be doing in class, but continually adding to them, seeing if they can perhaps think of alternative word choices, or perhaps if they could find additional quotes, even comparing how the characters are portrayed at the beginning of the novel compared to the end of it would actually be very, very useful. And then finally, even though there are some outstanding revision guides, such as printed revision guides, there's also lots of online sites that you can use, so please take advantage of them. Things like BBC Bitesize are particularly good. There's a range of different things that you could use on there, from videos to quizzes and even just key or chapter summaries. If you Google Of Mice and Men chapter 1, chapter 5, whatever you wanted, you'll see that there's an abundance of resources that you and your child would be able to use. So obviously that's everything that you could do to support your child, as well as supporting us. So what happens if you do all that and your child still doesn't actually get their global grade? There will be an opportunity to resit this in the summer. Obviously, we would like them to do the best that they can. We would like them to be displaying some of our learner values, so aspiring to achieve. However, if that doesn't happen for whatever reason, for example, at this moment in time, it could be an illness, or there's another mitigating factor that will be taken into consideration. However, we want to make it very clear that teaching time will be limited. It will then become the responsibility of the child, because at the moment we have 8 hours a fortnight teaching English. After January, we won't be allocating that amount of time within our lessons to English literature anymore. We'll be moving on to the English language. So it really is their responsibility, and obviously if it does come to them having to reset, we would support them as best we can outside of the classroom. We may run revision sessions for that targeted group, however we wouldn't be able to commit to the 8 hours a fortnight, which we are currently doing. That being said, they are still able to get a full GCSE in the second qualification, which we do at HLD, which is English language. It plays no part in affecting that, even if they haven't got one. They will still be able to do that next year and after January in year 11. So as Mr Johnson said already, there are a range of ways that you can get in touch if you needed any help or support. Your child obviously sees myself as well as the rest of the English department daily, but if you wanted to contact us, you could use the Class Chat app. You can telephone the main reception and the number is on the screen there for you. You can email Mrs Wilkinson, who is the head of English, or myself as the second in department, and we'll do our best to respond to you as promptly as we can. Or you can email your child's English teacher or head of year through Google Classrooms. They all have access to the classrooms and the class codes, and you should be able to contact your class teacher either through commenting or sending an email. And we are a very responsive department, so we will get back to you as best as we can. And finally, we are quite active on Twitter, so you can follow us for updates. HLD English, and then myself, Ms Crandon and Ms Price, as well as Mr Stone, all have individual Twitter handles that you can follow should you want any additional information. Hopefully I've covered everything there for you tonight, but of course, as I've said, if you want any further information or support, you only need to ask. I'm going to hand you back over to Mr Johnson now. Thank you very much.
Good evening all. Thank you, and thank you to Mrs Jones for the really detailed kind of feedback linked to the English literature paper there. I can see there's a few comments in the chat, but what I'd like to do is just pause for the moment and maybe give it 30 seconds to a minute for any parents or guardians to add any questions or comments to the chat, and the SLT team who are behind the scenes will do our best to answer them. So if you're welcome to unmute to ask a question verbally, that's fine, or you can use that chat function. So I'll just pause for the moment and read the questions that have already been submitted, and I'll get some kind of expert guidance from our English team if there are any specific questions linked to the literature paper. But thank you.